Alright guys, we have a description of tomorrow's 100-point test. Alright, I'm telling you right now that questions 1 through 4 are going to be solving multi-step inequalities. Alright, it's from section 5.3, and I even give you a couple of examples right here. So number 1, how would you do that? You want to get the x by itself. So let's first start by adding 1 to both sides. So plus 1, and you're going to get 3/4 x is greater than or equal to 6 left over. And now you still want to get rid of the divided by 4 on both sides. So you're going to go times 4, cancel, times 4 over here. You're going to have a new inequality. And I am running out of space. I did run out of space. Let me do this. Let me bring my new inequality up here. That will be 3x, and that'll be is greater than or equal to 24, and my final step would be to divide by 3, and x, I do not flip the inequality symbol because you didn't multiply or divide by a negative, so you end up with x equals 8, and that's your final answer right there to that inequality. Let's move on to the next example right here. This one requires a lot of simplification before even solving, so I'm going to distribute negative 6 times w. That's negative 6w. Negative 6 times 1, that's negative 6. Let's bring down the inequality, and let me distribute negative 4 times w. That's negative 4w. And negative 4 times 5, that's negative 20. Okay, so I've distributed. There is no combining like terms on this side. There's no combining like terms on that side. So I need to worry about getting w by itself on one side. So I have 6w here, negative 6w, and negative 4w. You don't want w's on both sides. You only want it on one side. So I'm going to get rid of the minus 4w by adding 4w. That'll cancel out. And what I do to one side, I do to the other side. Whoops, shouldn't have written that. It should be plus 4w. And when I combine that, I end up with a negative 2w minus 6. Bring down the inequality, bring down the minus and the 20. So there's my new inequality. I have w on the left side, so let's get it by itself. All you need to do is get rid of the minus 6 by going plus 6. That'll cancel out. What you do to one side, do to the other. And once again, I have run out of space, so let me move this a little to the side and let me rewrite. What do I have left on the left side? I have a negative 2w, and I also have the less than symbol, and I have a negative 14 because negative 20 plus 6 is negative 14. For my final step, I'm going to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, and right here is the answer, w. Now, because we divided by a negative, I need to flip the inequality symbol. Once again, notice right here it's a less than, over here now it's a greater than. That's only because I divided by a negative on both sides of my inequality. And of course, negative 14 divided by negative 2 is positive 7. There's my answer. All right, let's move on to the next section of tomorrow's test. Those were just regular inequalities. Now we have compound inequalities. So compound inequalities could be written together like this, or they could look like two separate inequalities, but there's the word and in between it, or they could look like two separate inequalities and have the word or between it. So let's start with the compound inequality, the one that has everything written together. Sorry, I'm jumping around this whole paper here. Anyway, you want to get b by itself, so let me zoom in a little to have more space. I want to get rid of the minus 1 by going plus 1, cancels, plus 1. Okay, so I also need to do it to the other outside term. So once again, what you do to the middle, you do to both outside sides. All right, so I got rid of the minus 1 by going plus 1, so I need to go plus 1 on both sides on the outside. So on the left side, I have a negative 4. I'm going to bring down the inequality, bring down the 2b, bring down the other inequality, and bring down 2. So now I want to get b by itself in the middle, so I'm going to divide by 2, cancels, divide by 2, divide by 2. So what will I have left? I will have a negative 2 is less than b, which is less than 1. Ladies and gentlemen, that is your compound inequality answer for that one. Let's move on to number 2. So number 2 is a little bit more interesting because there's this word and. Usually it's an or, which implies that the areas are apart. This and implies that the areas are together. So you're going to have to ultimately write it together as a compound inequality. Let's just solve each of them verify what it looks like on a number line, and if the areas are together, which they should be because of the word and, then we're going to write it together as a compound inequality that's written together. So let's take a look at the left one and solve this thing. I want to go plus 4 plus 4. That cancels. My new equation will be 2c is greater than negative 2. Okay, so for my final step, I'm going to divide by 2, cancels, divide by 2. Notice I'm not dividing by a negative, so the c comes down, the inequality stays the same. I do get negative 1. That is an answer. Maybe I shouldn't box it in. Let me just do that. I shouldn't box it in. Let's solve the other one. Over here on the other side, we're going to subtract 1, subtract 1. You're going to end up with 3c is less than, that's 12. And to get rid of the 3, I'm going to divide by 3, divide by 3. C is less than 4. And I'm not going to circle that either. You know what? I am going to circle both. We have that answer and we have this answer. But the thing is, we don't know if we're going to write these together as a compound inequality or if we should keep them apart with the word or. So if we think about a quick sketch of a number line, and let's put our numbers. Well, if you have a negative 1, it's obviously going to be on the left side because it's smaller than 4, and 4 is going to be on the right side because it's greater than negative 1. Now if we take a look at this first one, it says c is what compared to negative 1? C is greater than negative 1. So greater than, it would be an open dot to the right. Okay. Now the other one says c is less than 4, so that one's going to be an open dot, less than is to the left. So this is an area that's written together. It's between here and here. It's written together. It's all these. It's this area right here. So because it's written together, you cannot leave it as two separate inequalities. You have to write it together with the word, or not with the word or. You got to write it together as a compound inequality. So if you did this number line sketch, it's really easy from there. All you got to do is put the x in the middle, the smaller number on the left side, which is already on the left side, the bigger number on the right side, which is already on the right side, and then all you do is put inequality, the less than symbols. Always going to be less than symbols, because these values over here are always going to be greater than these values over here. So you put less than symbols, always opening up to the right. So that is your compound inequality answer right there for that question. Let's try another. So if you think about it, the word and implies that it's between here and here. Now the word or implies that it's going to be going that way or that way. Okay, so right here the areas are going to be apart. Let me show you that on number 3 here. You're going to solve both. Okay, so it's really easy. Plus 3 plus 3. You're going to have k. You didn't divide by a negative, so it stays the same with the negative 4 on the right side. Now that's an answer. Okay. Now let's do the other one, minus 5. Minus 5. K is greater than or equal to 3. That's another answer. Now if you think about the number line, you have the negative 4 right here on the left side. You have the positive 3 on the right side. Okay, 0 is somewhere in between. And if you think about the first answer, K is what compared to negative 4? K is less than negative 4. So less than is to the left. And if you think about the other one that says K is what compared to 3? K is greater than or equal to 3. So greater than is to the right. Now, this guy right here, because it has a solid line underneath your inequality, if you were asked to graph, you'd have to put this solid dot right here. Now, in this case, all I really need to do is to solve it, so I just need to give my answer. And the only reason why I actually graphed this thing was to see if I write these guys together, x in the middle, smaller number, bigger number, or if I keep them separate. Now, because the areas are separate, I'm going to keep them separate, all right? So my final answer should be both of these guys just written separate with the word or between it, or. Okay, so you need to put the word or right between them. So maybe I shouldn't have boxed them in like this and like this. You should box the whole thing in. This whole thing is your answer. K is less than negative 4, or K is greater than or equal to 3. So that whole thing is your answer. You're going to have to actually write that pretty small on your answer column on tomorrow's test, so please write small. Let's move on to the next section, which says to write the compound inequality of the graph that's shown. And if we take a look, we could already see one right here. Let me just move it up a little. It says write the compound inequality. So is this, what does this say? If it has an open dot here going this way, then it is saying that x, or whatever variable you pick, you could use n or whatever you want, x is what compared to -6? And if it's going to the left, that means less than. So less than. So there you go, x is less than -6. Now on this one over here, what does it say? Here's 2, and it's obviously going that way, to the left or to the right? It's going to the right. So what are we going to say? X is greater than -2. Now notice that both of these had an open dot and an open dot. None of them had solid dots right there. If they were solid dots, I'd have to put a solid line underneath them. And that's not the case. They're open dots, so I do not put solid lines underneath them. Now, because the areas are apart, I need to write the word or right between them, and that would be my answer for this particular problem. Now, let's take a look at the next one. This next one has the areas together, okay? So when the areas are together, it really becomes like the easiest problem in the world. You have the -2 that's already on the left side. You have the +6 that's already on the right side. All you got to do is put an x in the middle and less than symbols. Yeah, that's right, less than symbols. Once again, the number line already puts the number 6 in order as being the greater value on the right, the -2 of being the lesser value on the left. So because it's already in order, it's always going to be less than symbols because they always have to open up to the right. They always have to open up to the right. Okay, so it's really that simple. That's your answer. We should all ace tomorrow's test, huh? Now for the hardest part of the test is solving absolute value inequalities. I'm going to zoom in a lot because you really need a lot of space for this. When you do absolute value inequalities, you need to set up both situations, the positive and the negative. And the positive situation would be rewriting this whole thing exactly the way it is without the absolute values. There it is. And the negative situation would be rewriting it exactly the way it is, but change that and change the sign of that. So you're going to flip this and add a negative right there. Notice that the 2g is still 2g, the -7 is still -7. This flipped, and then the 9 became -9. That's how you do the negative situation. Now we need to technically work out both, all right? So on the left side, I'm going to have +7, +7. I'm going to have 2g is greater than or equal to 16. Then I'm going to divide by g, or not divide by g, divide by 2. Divide by 2. G is greater than or equal to 8. Okay, that's an answer. Let me do the other one. +7, +7. I'm going to have 2g less than or equal to -2. And my final step would be to divide by 2 and divide by 2. So I will have g is less than or equal to -1. Now notice that I didn't flip the inequality symbol because I did not divide by a negative. Anyhow, you have your two answers. The thing is, you need to verify whether these two answers belong together as a compound inequality written together or written separately with the word or in between them. So you have to think of the number line, or you could use that trick that I showed you. The symbol is a greater symbol. Greater has the word or in between them, so that would be that they're going apart, right? Greater is apart. If it's less than, it's between here and here, right? So if you don't want to think about the greater or less than, you could simply do a quick sketch of a number line. Okay, and you have your -1 on this side, your +8 on this side. Let's focus in on this one right here. G is greater than or equal to -8. Okay, greater than or equal to is a solid dot. It's going to the right. And the other one that says G is less than or equal to -1, solid dot, less than is to the left. So these areas are apart, which means that your answers have to stay apart with the word or right between them. So your final answer on your answer sheet tomorrow, you have to write both of them. G is greater than or equal to 8, or G is less than or equal to -1.